And it's time now to be joined by second-term Republican State House Representative Brad Slagh and the other end of our uh, Zoom connection. Brad, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Hey, good morning, Gary. Hopefully the video and audio is coming through this morning, and we're actually in communication.
We are A-OK on that. And if you have a question for Brad, he'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450. Two related questions. We brought the subjects up a little bit earlier in our open line, and I will bring them in two different ways. First of all, we took a look at the local districts in our area when classes start. And of the public school districts, which is under state law, none of them, absolutely none, start classes after Labor Day. Every single one starts before. I was under the impression, and the law hasn't been revoked unless it has been, and I don't know about it, that classes weren't supposed to start until after Labor Day because to help the tourism industry. You get an exemption from the State Department of Education. You can start earlier. Now everybody is starting it. Why have a law on the books if nobody's going to obey it?
You said there were two, and so I want to make sure. Do I need to write this one down and then get back to you, or should we start with this?
We'll start with this one, please.
Okay, good, perfect. You know what? My understanding is that law is still on the books, and you are exactly right. I think all of the school districts, especially this year, we're looking for ways to engage education earlier because they know that students missed out on stuff in the past school year. And so everybody was interested in trying to get started, even if it's only a week early or a few days early. Everybody was looking for the way to be able to get our kids together, get them started, help them start learning because of the learning loss that's happened in the last year.
But yet the law is still on the books, which means if we get to, say, August 2022, will the hammer start coming down saying, hey, let's get back to what it was before the 2020 outbreak?
That's a great question, Gary. I think the answer is that the legislature is looking at it very seriously right now to see if there's a way that we can take that law off the books. I think the focus is how do we help schools bring learning to our students, and that may mean we just don't have the agrarian calendar necessities that we had at one point in time with our students. And so does it make sense for us to look at maybe more of a year-round calendar, other kinds of things as we move forward? So I think the legislature is seriously interested in looking at those things as we move.
However, I'll be frank with you on this. The tourism travel lobby is going to be saying, hey, wait a minute, what about us? That's how you passed a law in the first place.
Yeah, I know. It definitely will. It's not, and this is definitely not a downhill battle. It may be an uphill battle, but I think it's still worth the consideration for how do we do that. If our goal is young people who actually are able to meet the needs of both businesses and making sure that we have a solid educational program, I think we need to be looking at those kinds of things to say, does it make sense?
616-395-1450. If you have a question for State House Representative Brad Slagh, I'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450. The other point we brought up in our earlier discussions on the program today was dealing with what's the situation with masks for the school districts. Holland, along with Black River, and Saugatuck are requiring masks for everyone in their buildings. Holland, West Ottawa, along with Black River and Saugatuck, requiring all. Zeeland, Hamilton, not required as of right now. Holland Christian, along with Fenville, requiring it for grades for kindergarten through 6th grade. You, along with State Senator Roger Victory and State Representative Jim Lilly are on record saying, hey, pardon me, I should say Luke Meerman, your fellow representative from Coopersville, are on record saying, hey, we don't like these mask mandates in schools.
So let me just clarify. The position was we don't believe that the health department should make those rules. We really believe that if you bring this to the lowest, closest level to the community, that really is each school board for each district. So we asked the letter specifically asked the health department not to make the decision, but to allow the local school boards to make that decision of whether they were going to do mask mandates or not. And so that was really our focus. Is the school boards have asked for authority. We really should be giving them authority for how do they help the students most in their communities.
But however, and then Peg's got a question along those lines. I'm hearing districts saying we're waiting for guidance from the health department, waiting for guidance from Lansing on all this. And basically you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that, hey, school boards, you got to make the decision. Don't look to us and then, back your hands off on this.
No, the specific language in that letter says, we believe it's the school board's responsibility. We believe that the school board needs to do that in conjunction with or in consultation with the health department, our local health department, who understands what's going on from a science perspective, and they need to do that in consultation with their parents. Just because the health department says something doesn't mean that the parents necessarily need to believe that or buy it, nor does it mean that the school board needs to believe it or buy it, but they need to all be in consultation with each other to be able to move that forward. The decision should still be, from my perspective and from Senator Victory and from Luke Meerman's perspective, Representative Luke Meerman, that we should have that as the school board's decision, not as a health department decision, not as just a parent decision. All of those need to be in consultation with each other.
Peg McNichol has a question from the newsroom. Go ahead, Peg.
So with all due respect, if we can believe it or not, or buy it or not, in your words, the recommendations of public health officials, why do we have a public health department? Because they're kind of expensive.
Well, so the answer is maybe there's and once again, this is my opinion, right? So and I'm really good at my opinions. I'm maybe not so good at facts all the time, but I'm really good at my opinions. My opinion is that we need to have a health department because you need that information. You need to be able to disseminate that information somehow in your community. You need to be able to look at all of those pieces. Just because there is some opinion at the health department that this is what needs to be done doesn't mean that everybody else really believes that. And so I understand that it's important to make sure that we're listening to the best science. It's also important to understand that science may not necessarily take care of all of the ills by itself.
And while science may not do that, a person's opinion is less based on that often than the scientific effort to be consistent in one way. I mean, I have an aunt who died of diphtheria at age 3. Her brother survived. There was a public health outreach to quarantine, to take certain measures. We have seen this happen as kids. I mean, you might be a little younger than Gary and I are, but when we were kids and we had chickenpox, we weren't out in the neighborhood passing it around. My goodness, my mother had 8 kids. We had to stay in our room and the other kids could not come in. So there was a consistent approach to trying to limit the spread of those diseases. And that's why I'm a little confused as to why a science-based health department directive or guidelines would be encouraged in the public by an elected official like yourself and the others you mentioned, for the general public to just choose their own adventure.
And Peg, though I would not disagree with some of what you said, I also remember in my time as a parent, there were groups of parents who were getting kids together who one had chickenpox, the rest of them didn't, and they were literally getting them together so that chickenpox happened in large measures so that they got through it. And they did it now rather than having it happen sometime into the future. So yes, you're exactly right. But the science was there that we were going to get sick from chickenpox, but parents were looking for that to happen so that it didn't happen later on, even in life, in the form of shingles or other kinds of stuff. So.
And the problem with that approach is that there is a small percentage of children who die from those childhood diseases, and that's why they want to limit them. And I know probably, folks, listeners, I probably sound argumentative, but I spent 7 years working for a healthcare system in Detroit, a big one, and I've reported on health for years. I don't understand that. Is it that people don't understand children can die from these diseases, or they're okay with a small percentage dying, as our afternoon sports host has suggested?
And I don't have an answer for you on that particular piece, but I do believe that, once again, it should be our responsibility as people to work on trying to make sure that there's health and we're understanding why we're doing things for each person and for each particular health need that we have.
616-395-1450. We have time for one call before we button up our conversation with State Representative Brad Slagh. Good morning. You're on the line with the representative.
Hi. I'd like to just address one statement to Brad Slagh. Does he not know that shingles comes from the chickenpox virus that remains in our body all of our lives once we have had chickenpox, and that many older people suffer from it, and they're very, very ill. Some of them get it in their eyes. They go blind. Where is his science that he doesn't know that shingles comes from having had the chickenpox? And so that's a false approach, if ever there was one, to get kids together and let them all get sick, because, as Peg said, sometimes people did die of these things, and they exposed them to something that happened later on in life that could be very dangerous also.
Let me get his response. Thank you very much for the call, Brad.
Yeah, I do understand that the chickenpox and the shingles whatever disease or virus or whatever it is gets into our system, and that's where we get it from. My understanding is whether you get the shot for chickenpox to be able to try and ward that off, or you get chickenpox, that virus is still there, and you still can get shingles from both of those things. So it isn't that we aren't going to have that in our system. There is shots for those kinds of things to try and help reduce the impact to us as adults. I've had a shingles shot. I understand that I don't want the shingles, and I understand there's true repercussions from it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is health things. People put kids together. I know that they did.
And I think I'll be honest with you. I'm thinking we're going a little far afield because you are not a doctor. You don't play one on radio. You don't play one on TV. But the state legislature and getting involved with this because of the fact of what happened over the last 18 plus months. Lawmakers are getting involved in a public health situation, and unfortunately, Brad's a fact of life.
Yeah, true.
All right, we got to button this. My music went too loud. We got to button up our conversation, but we appreciate your time spent with us today, Brad Slagh. And if all goes well, let's do this again next month, hopefully on time.
Great deal. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Brad Slagh. 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.